Thank you so much, Charlie Brooker, for coming. One of the most influential satirists and writers working today, from his Guardian TV columns in the early 2000s to Screenwipe, Nathan Barley, and then global fame and influence through his series Black Mirror, a funny, angry, surreal, dystopian, terrifying look at how tech intersects with humanity. Charlie Brooker, thank you very much for being here.
Thank you. That's very nice of you to say all of that.
Hopefully it will stay that way.
Okay. Christ, okay.
That sounded really threatening. It didn't mean to at all. On a much more neutral note, I should say that we want to open it up to questions. I know a lot of you probably have questions for Charlie, so you're not going to have to wait till the end in about 10 minutes or something like that. Stick your hand up, and then we'll bring you into the conversation, and we'll try and make audience questions a big part of tonight's evening. One thing that was shocking to me when I was doing my research into Black Mirror was how early it started, like 2011.
Mm-hmm. We're an old show.
You're an old,
especially in today's world. Yeah, we've just finished shooting and we're in production. So we're in post-production on season 7. So that makes us geriatric, basically.
It's like an institution. It's like Newsnight or something. But
Emmerdale.
Yeah.
Much like this, technological Emmerdale.
Technological. Okay, so it is about technology, but it's also not about technology. But if we stick with technology for a second, are you more worried about technology now than you were in 2011?
I think I'm as worried about technology now as I was in 2011, but I'm probably more worried about us, as in humans. So I do think that always, the one thing I get frustrated about with the show is sometimes it gets summed up as, you know, the iPhones are bad show, or the, you know, old man waving his fist at the iCloud kind of thing. And even though that is increasingly true, I think that I've always been slightly in awe of technology. I'm quite dweeby when it comes to technology. I used to be a video games journalist back in the 90s, which was a brilliant job then. And I've always been a kind of early adopter of all sorts of things. I'm fascinated by gadgetry and computers and what they can do. The thing is that they're also really powerful tools, and I am also, unfortunately, afflicted with the ability to worry instantly about everything. So I tend to extrapolate worries. So really technology is getting more and more disruptive and powerful, but it's us, we're the ones wielding it. So it's really our ability to misuse it that worries me.
How do you personally use technology? Like what devices do you have, and what are you addicted to? What do you want to put down that you find you yourself unable to? At the moment, I've been playing a video game called UFO 50, which is 50 retro games created. Actually, I could go on about that for a long time, but most 99% of you would be really bored. And that's quite addictive. There's a game called Balatro. It's mainly games. There's a game called Balatro that just came out. It's the most addictive game ever made. It just came out on phones, and I think if you download that, you're screwed. So that really, but then again, like anyone, I think like I probably spend. I used to smoke in the 90s. I used to smoke, and I got up to 60 cigarettes a day. I used to smoke in the shower, which takes skill and a sort of absolute dedication and a disrespect for yourself. It's quite a challenge, because you hold one hand out, you scrub with the other hand, you swap it round, scrub with this hand, do that, and then elegantly flick it into the loo. Anyway, so I think I've got an addictive personality, and I used to reach for cigarettes first thing in the morning, and now I reach for my phone without thinking. And so, like anyone, I find it really hard to put that down. I don't particularly worry about it, because I don't really use social media anymore. I was, and now it's not fun anymore. Do you not use social media because you don't find it fun, or because you actually were worried about your relationship with it?
I just don't want to listen to a bunch of cunts. It's basically that. It's that. It sort of just became. It just sounds like a room full of bullies.
What were you on? Were you on like X, as it's now called?
Well, no. So, so I maintain, and so sometimes I'll sort of tweet out promotional material and stuff, but I don't tend to use it, and I don't tend to, because I just realised every time I look at this, I feel bad. Like it was just making me feel bad, and it's just sort of, it's just kind of gone horrible, hasn't it? So I just, yeah, that's basically it. I don't. It feels like the bullies started running amok.
Do you use technology? I mean, you've explained how you use technology to play games and to get enjoyment out of that. Do you use technology in any kind of cutting edge way for your work?
I mean, I've toyed around with things. Like I remember being quite interested. You know, when I've toyed around with things like Midjourney in the past, which was like AI image generation, but not for work, more to like go, what the hell's going on here? And then it does prompt story ideas, because you think, okay, well, if you can create photorealistic imagery that quickly now, well, in a few years' time there'll just be sort of live video, and so that sort of helps prompt a story idea. And I use probably when was it? When we did an interactive episode called Bandersnatch in 2018, and I had to sort of learn to use Twine, which is like a bit like HTML. It's like coding sort of software for interactive fiction. But does that count as cutting edge? It sounds cutting edge.
It sounds really cutting edge.
But I think writing a script is like coding anyway, because it's basically a technical document you're writing when you write a script, and you can get bugs in it where you've forgotten something, you've changed something, and then you find something that's a hangover, and like suddenly on the day there's like a big prop being brought in, and you're like, we don't need that big. Sorry, we don't need that papier-mâché head of Boris Johnson anymore. Boris Johnson, he's moved into the village where I grew up.
Oh my God! It's
a tiny village. Fucked my memories of my own childhood up now. Shat all over them. Hate him. Sorry, that was an aside. That was an intrusive thought. Yeah. Anyway.
Shall we talk about Boris?
No. I did find him depressing, because he's an interesting one. We did an episode that was based on him in some ways. We did an episode this was 2013. This is how old a show we are. We did a show called an episode called The Waldo Moment, which I felt I didn't get the script for that right, and I felt it was far-fetched at the time. It was about a cartoon character who gets elected as an MP, and it's controlled by a comedian. And I was trying to channel something I was feeling about something that was possible, and Boris Johnson was sort of like in my head as a bumbling character, comedy character on panel shows.
Even back then?
Yeah, because I think he was already showing up in things. Was he already Mayor of London at that point? I think he may well have been. And so he was already this sort of lovable, bungling oaf that everybody seemed to like, and I just didn't like. And it seemed like, oh, you're kind of bulletproof as a politician, as a political force. Something like that is kind of bulletproof, because it's dancing around and saying it's all just a joke. And so I was trying to channel that in a way, I guess, then.
And that's really interesting, because that is an example, I think, that people who love Black Mirror would use to say, this is predicting the future. Like, this is 2013, you said that potentially about Boris, but then you had Boris, and then you had most obviously Trump, but you don't like the soothsayer mantle.
Not really, because I don't think I'm predicting things. I mean, the pig episode was a weird one.
How did you know?
I didn't know anything. I honestly didn't know anything, because if I'd known, I wouldn't have bothered writing an episode about it, would I? I'd have been out in the streets, shirtless, screaming that at traffic. And I suspect that's not true. I think we just want it to be true. But no, I don't, because I don't think I really predict things. I think I worry about things and I extrapolate. So I do have a brain that goes, if you show me an invention in the morning and I've thought of 50 ways it could take my hand off, basically by the mid-afternoon. So I think I worry a lot, and I think I'm looking at, but I don't like study the tech pages and go, what are the trends? What are the tech bros doing over in Silicon Valley? What are they doing? I couldn't give a shit about them.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's why I slightly try to don't think in those terms. And also I think because if you're thinking in story terms, I'm just always thinking what's an interesting, horrible dilemma to put somebody in, or what's an interesting interesting new form of anguish that could be brought about by some technological means.
You've talked in the past, I think, about anguish and worry being quite a big driving force behind Black Mirror and comedy, but also anger, maybe. Do you think anger is a big part of the show?
Anger, I think so. We've got an episode we got coming up that's pretty angry. I think there's certainly, you can see some of the episodes are. I hope it's never. I think it's always tempered with humour. Hopefully, I don't know how much the humour carries, because I think that sometimes there's things. Sometimes there's story ideas that I think are sort of darkly hilarious that I forget are actually horrible by the time it comes out. But there's quite a bit of anger. I'm probably not as angry a person as I used to be because I've got sort of fat and complacent.
I do want to come to that in a minute.
What? Which part of that do you want to come to in a minute?
Well, I had a question about how you maintain your position as a satirist, as someone that's like punching down,
right?
When you are
satirists are meant to punch up, though. Hang on a minute.
Yeah, sorry, I've got confused. When you're supposed to punch up, when you've got this massive Netflix deal, when you're a showrunner, when you are basically part of the establishment, is there a tension? Do you sometimes feel, how am I going to maintain the snark given how good a position I'm in today?
Luckily, no. I'm a horrible individual. Oh look, they cut my mic. They cut my mic. Did they cut?
They cut my, yeah.
Look, they cut. Well, I'll just project. I'll project for a moment if you can hear me. One, two, three. Abbey Road fucking studios. Microphones don't work. Come on. I'll just shout, which will make me sound angry. Oh, hello. They're going to bring out another mic or something in a second. Well, I will talk loudly for a second. I think that luckily, I'm probably just malad. Oh look. Hello. Can you hear me?
Yep.
All right. Okay. Got that through me for a second. Giles Martin up in the control box probably. So how do I maintain the snark? Well, you can still be annoyed by injustices, and you can still be annoyed or dismayed by the way things are going, and you can still worry about the world that is going to be left for your children, or the lack of it. And I can still be very afeared at the sort of assault on reality that seems to be going on, without, even if I am, obviously, I'm not struggling to pay my bills and things like that. So hopefully maybe I should just be fucking thrown in the wilderness or something somewhere and made to, hopefully you can maintain a sense of injustice and a sense of annoyance and anger. Yeah.
Do you think that, oh, that's quite loud.
We're picking up a minicab firm from somewhere. Yeah.
Do you think that you are a misanthrope?
No, I don't think I am. I think that sometimes Black Mirror takes a dim view of society, or a sort of disappointed view of society would probably be a better way of putting it. I don't think I am. I think I used to write sort of TV columns from a heightened comic perspective, but I was clearly channeling some deep massive outrage and insecurity I was feeling at people on TV who I assumed had a wonderful life.
Right.
And now the more you do TV, you realise, they're just trying. They're just human beings trying. So I don't think I am a misanthrope. I hope not. I hope not.
Because one of the reactions that I had from watching part of season 6 of Black Mirror was that this is Charlie Brooker's way of when you're satirizing Netflix, when you're putting Netflix front and center of episodes like Joan is awful, and when you're putting Netflix's true crime obsession in Lock Henry, that is your way of saying, you might have given me all this money, mate, but I'm still going to give you a kick.
I honestly did. I mean, Lock Henry, definitely. There's a line in there that's about, they say something about seeing a documentary on Netflix. Joan is awful. It was really, the timing when it came out was really weird because it came out just at the start of the writer's strike and just before the actor's strike. And this was one of the things that, obviously actors in particular, writers, because of course, when I first saw ChatGPT, a terrible, cold sense of animal dread coursed through me, and I thought, "Oh my God, I'm going to get replaced, and this is going." But we did Joan. That was a few weeks after we wrapped on Joan is Awful, so we'd shot it all, and we had it all ready to go. And then when it came out, it almost came out in kind of the very week that all these things were on people's minds. And actually, the sort of Netflixy side of that was, it said in the script that it was a streaming service, and then we thought, well, let's make it look like, we got permission to make it look like Netflix. We called it Streamberry, and then it looked probably more than it was that I was going. It wasn't. It was. Now, Lock Henry, that's about true crime documentaries, and it's basically. But again, where that came from, the genesis for that sort of whole thing was twofold. One, I always wanted to do something about, you go to an awards ceremony and there's a bit where it's like best news team, and they're listing 4 horrible incidents that happened, and then a news team, somebody wins and they come and they dancing down the aisle. I mean, usually they then go, let's pause for a minute and be sad as well, but hooray. That always struck me as the cognitive dissonance of that I found interesting. And also I was watching a true crime documentary actually on the BBC. It was a very good one, and I was really enjoying it. I was watching it with my wife, and it opened with a big drone shot over a lake in Scotland. And me and my wife started Googling where it was because it looked so lovely. We thought, let's go there. And then I thought, that's weird, isn't it? I'm a huge consumer of these things, to the point where I'll consume true crime documentaries and actually get disappointed if not enough people have been killed by the end of them. And that's an interesting observation. Do you know what I mean? It's like I want it to be nastier. So something about me is so I'm probably just attacking myself.
Something about the emotional levers that those
they
shows
were very
pull.
good spot. I mean, yes, there's no doubt that Netflix has a lot of true crime documentaries, but they're very popular across the board. They were very good sports about it, I have to say, almost annoyingly so. It wasn't like I had to sneak in and upload it to their servers in secret. They knew absolutely everything that was going on in it. And they were kind of fun. They didn't push back on any of it.
Amazing. All right, so let's have some questions. Who would like to go first? There's a guy standing up.
Okay.
Does it work?
Yeah.
Yeah, it does. Thanks
enough.
very much. You've mentioned Midjourney and ChatGPT, and you also mentioned the writer's strike. What is your view on particularly how ChatGPT and other types of generative AI technologies and their role in the creative process going forward?
I can see that, I think, first of all, at the moment they're still have you heard of Eliza? One of the first ones that was basically like a really simple program that would mimic a psychotherapist. And they're kind of like super Eliza, basically. They're performing a bit of a magic trick because it's just regurgitating information in a way. It's Mike Yarwood. There's a contemporary reference that made everyone's eyes go blank. John Culshaw. It's an impersonator. Fuck me. Did I feel like the oldest person in the room there for a sec? Mike Yarwood used to be an impersonator who'd come out and do Prince Charles and to sort of do whoever else was alive when I was also alive. And so it's doing an impersonation of a human, and there's not much actually there. And of course, you can do. Of course, one of the first things I did was I typed in, "Well, go on, tell me tell me an idea for a Black Mirror episode." And it started like, as it comes in line by line. And again, I got this cold, sort of clammy sense of dread straight away, because you start thinking, "Oh my God, this seems like plausible." And then as you read it, you go, "This is fucking rubbish," and it's derivative because it's just looked at other things that it thinks are a bit Black Mirror-y, and it's sort of kind of going, "Will this do?" is what it's saying. That said, I can see the value in terms of a tool, much as an artist would use the tools in Photoshop to sort of fill things in the background. But even if you look at like art that's pumped out by AI, you can spot it. You can see straight, like a lot of it, it's weirdly got a style that's sort of boring and symmetrical and sort of, and it's halfway between a cartoon and a drawing, but sort of by default. So I think you're always going to want a stinky human at the middle of things, basically.
And do you think, so obviously that reaction that you're having is based on ChatGPT and Midjourney in like 2022, 23, 24. Mm-hmm. What happens if in 2030 things are different?
Well, I'm fucked.
But
no, but I don't. But I do.
But you don't think you will be. You don't think you will be.
I can see that. I could see that you could sit there and you could make. But you know you know how when you go to see a superhero movie, I always feel like the reason I sort of like they're very well made. I just can't get into them because I always feel like the last 20 minutes goes into what I would call washing machine mode, where it's just sort of CGI stuff smashing around, and I feel like I'm staring through the window of a washing machine at objects just spinning around, but for 25 fucking minutes. And I get bored because I don't have a human foothold on it, whereas it's much more exciting to me, as a miserable old man, if I watch Raiders of the Lost Ark, and it looks real, the stunts look real, I'm much more excited and engaged. And I kind of don't think that will change. You will inevitably get, there'll be the AI equivalent of Pixar movies, things like that, because who would have seen that coming, right. I think when Toy Story first came out, that was like, Jesus Christ, this looks great, and I'm crying. So that's going to happen. Whether you'll ever want to watch AI people walking around, I can't quite see that. I can't see that.
Yep, we got a question over there.
Hello.
So I'm a scientist, and I do research on memory, and I really enjoyed your episode on memory. Mm-hmm. I guess in terms of not being derivative, one of the things that science is good at is new shit. The question for you is, how much do you consult with scientists?
Well, I'm afraid to say, I never, I don't tend to actually read up on the topics I'm looking at. It's interesting, again, I can't really talk about the news. We've got an episode that's to do with memories and things like that. When you say the episode on memory, what happened in it? I don't expect you to know the title. Which one do you mean? 'Cause
it was the one where everything was recorded.
Oh, that one. Oh, where the entire history of you, where everything is. Yeah. And in a way, that's more footage, isn't it? It's more evidence. It's more CCTV and surveillance in a way.
Is your new one on false memory? So
I'm not going to tell you because we haven't done it yet. It's not out yet.
Charlie, can you tell us a bit about what you can say about season 7?
I can talk about some of the cast. We've got a lot of Paul Giamatti is in what we've got lots of. Brilliant. I'll forget all their names. Emma Corrin. Awkwafina, Issa Rae, loads and loads of people. Peter Capaldi is in one. We've got some big sort of American names, and we've got a mix of British names and a mix of people who will be the stars of tomorrow, who you haven't heard of, who are starring in episodes and things like that. But to your point on memory and science, I don't tend to, because I'm doing science fiction. I kind of don't want to know. In fact, I've had it in episodes before where there's an obvious, massive, gaping hole in the science, and I kind of don't want someone to point out to me that it's wrong. Because I remember one of the first things I did a zombie series called Dead Set years ago, and I was fretting over a logic hole. And the director said to me, "It's a movie moment. Who gives a shit? It's a movie moment." And I thought, okay, yeah. If you want something to happen in the story, I'll just sort of run roughshod over it. So I don't tend to... I respect science, but I also ignore it at whim. Much like Right Said Fred. Not in the same way as Right Said Fred.
Thank goodness. We got a question over there, and then we'll
Hello.
come to the wavy person.
Like
Yeah, let's go to the
drowning person.
I recently spent a year without any like digital technology, like just as a kind of experiment.
Yeah.
And I noticed I changed a lot as like in every way, but one way was like I became much less something like ADHD.
Right.
And yeah, just that was one of many ways in which I felt like I changed. And I wonder what you think the future, like general average human is like in 50, 60, 100 years, like once we've really deep in this, like how are we? What kind of people are we?
You mean in our inability to focus and concentrate? Because
Just in every way, like is it like, are we like Wall-E people, or are we better than that?
Yeah, I think it's...
I don't know. I could look at my kids who are like terrifyingly au fait with everything and don't seem to sort of worry about technology at all. I do want to launch, by the way, a VR digital detox. So it's like a thing, you put an Oculus Quest on and you're sitting in a log cabin with no access to any... I should monetize. I should do
good.
that. Actually do that.
Have you got a name?
I should do that, shouldn't I? Definitely. You're just sitting there. It's just you and a log fire. Maybe a banjo. I don't know. I don't know, like how... Because it is interesting, because these things are... I don't think any of us can really remember what our brain chemistry was like. The scientists can tell us. Before smartphones and things came in and we spent every waking moment stroking and prodding them. Because it's better, clearly, than real life. Otherwise, we wouldn't bother. So I don't know what we'll be like. I guess we'll just probably we'll have more channels in our head. Because I find that people younger than me can focus, or seem to think they can focus on 3 things at once, and I can't. So maybe that, but well done for doing a year without anything. How did you, I mean, I'd have broken down and cried on day 2.
Are you now back on the tech?
Yeah, I am. And actually, I have to have a phone for work now. And I've noticed that it's like I've had like an extreme relapse where now I spend like 6 hours a day on, like, but I don't have social media. I like deleted that, but now I just scroll anything and it's like, it feels like really intense.
Jesus. That's dark.
There's one more question, then I'm going to ask some more questions, then you can ask some more questions.
Hi, I find Dark Mirror really, Black Mirror really, really dark, and you're actually a hell of a lot funnier and upbeat than I thought you'd be. I just wonder how pessimistic you are about humanity and where our future goes.
I can get really pessimistic really quickly. So I think like a lot of sort of people, because my background is in comedy, so that's probably why I tend to laugh things off. I mean, I think I grew up in the like assuming that I was going to be annihilated in a blinding white flash of nuclear Armageddon any second. So pretty pessimistic. I can be pretty pessimistic, but by the same token, we're still here, which is miraculous, and we do have a propensity to create incredible devices and come up with ways of getting out of things. So I don't know. It's probably a bit of a coin flip, much like the US election terrifyingly seems to be. So I can't quite answer that because I'm both pessimistic and then, you know, I've got kids, so I have to sort of put that to the back of my mind a lot of the time as well.
Before we look at Black Mirror in a bit more detail, can we talk about what was happening to you before Black Mirror? Mm-hmm. What was the thing that you were most proud of that you did before you got onto Black Mirror?
Well, I've sort of done lots of weird. I've done lots of different things. So, like, my first job, I was a cartoonist, and that was quite good fun. And then I was a video. I worked in. I worked in Computer Exchange, which became CEX. I did the logo for CEX, which is still used.
You designed
to this day.
it.
That's a fun fact. I was paid £1,000, and I thought this is a fortune. And then they became this global fucking thing. then so probably I did a website called TV Go Home. I was very proud of that at the time because it meant that I was actually doing something, because I spent most of my 20s bitter that I wasn't writing for TV, because I wanted to write TV comedy and I couldn't see a way in. I wasn't like an Oxbridge person, so I was bitter and angry about that. And I'd watch comedy shows on TV, and if they were good, and if they were bad, I was furious, because like, how come this shit gets on the air? And if they were great, I was even more furious, because it's like, I could never do that. And I couldn't sort of see a way in, and then, but I was doing a website, and a friend of mine suggested I did this one thing. He said, if you just do it regularly, people might want to read that. And so I sort of actually kept at something for possibly the first time in my life. I was doing this little fortnightly thing, and it became a little culty thing, and that's what led to me getting a job at The Guardian. It led to me getting my job like writing on TV shows. So it sort of opened the door to me. So in a way, actually bothering to do a small thing every fortnight was probably my proudest achievement.
And do you think that
Oh, Touch of Cloth, I should say. Did a show called Touch of Cloth, which was like a bit like Airplane or Naked Gun, and it's kind of overlooked, and it was like possibly the most mainstream thing I've ever done. But that was 2010, I think, 2011.
And I think you said you spent a lot of your 20s watching TV, and then in one case you actually tipped the TV onto its side so you could watch it in bed.
Yeah, it's a tip, lifestyle tip. You can't, I mean, I think this was in the days of when TVs were like, it was like a portable CRT 14-inch TV. You couldn't do that with a great big... These days, they're the size of a fucking wall, though, aren't they? And why don't they have a mode? Why don't they just have, like, depressed mode, where you can just, like, press a button and it's sideways, so you can just... Because it's really annoying, isn't it? Or when you're on a sofa and you're sort of like this, and it's like, watching something subtitled. It's like, why can't TVs just have a sort of rotational...
To just spin it around.
Yeah, I don't mean the whole set, I just mean the image. It would be so easy. They won't do that yet. They will do that fucking mode that makes everything look like a soap opera with all the fucking fields removed by default. I got quite angry about that, didn't I? Angry about that. Field remove, whatever it's called. Motion smoothing. Fucking
motion
bastards.
smoothing.
Yeah.
But do you think, looking back, that actually all those hours watching TV, it's actually quite important, actually quite formative?
Yes, I do. And I think that I was sort of trying my hand at I found my sort of comic voice in a way when I was doing video game reviews, for instance. So I didn't know that at the time you're doing these things that I was sort of like, I want to be doing something else, but actually you're putting lots of practice in. And I was absorbing lots of TV and watching it, and I must have been analysing it on some level as it was going in and depressing or enraging me. So I think, yes. Well, certainly even like when I was doing... So Black Mirror started at the very first episode, the national anthem, which is the one about the Prime Minister and the pig. That episode is actually a parody of 24 with Kiefer Sutherland. That's sort of how it started out in my head. In fact, the Black Mirror titles are almost a parody of the titles for 24. You're too young to remember the titles for 24. It was just like a sort of wearing like digital thing. If you watch them side by side, I've probably opened myself up to a lawsuit. But and so sometimes I'm channeling something almost in a sarcastic way, and sometimes I'm just learning from what I've seen.
And are you always conscious of the references?
Not all the time. It's interesting sometimes when you find that you've, like I was right, without giving anything away. So one thing, I just watched The Bear, and then I started writing an episode for the new season, and there was like loads of sort of, there's people working on chocolate, and I was describing like they're smearing chocolate all over it, they're chopping it up, like I was just describing the sort of fetishized sort of like food shots they do that. So sometimes things go in and you go, why am I writing? Oh, it's just because I've just seen that. I'm hungry. And then other times you're sort of channeling, you're definitely trying to channel the tone of something, or something's gone in and then it has to come out. But there's definite times when we've done episodes which are almost direct homages to existing things. We did an episode called USS Callister, which is like a Star Trek sort of homage stroke spoof. We've done a sequel to that actually for the season. for this season coming up. There's a
With
sequel to
Jesse...
it. With Kristen Milioti.
right.
Jesse Plemons is dead in it. Robert Daly died, so we've got the rest of the crew. We've got a... Jesse Plemons himself is dead. His
he's
character,
okay.
Robert Daly, is dead. That's what I was... just to clear that one up. Yes, and that's channeling. There's a very specific episode of The Twilight Zone that I watched, which was about a 9-year-old boy who's got sort of super powers, and it's a kind of actually a great study of tyrants generally, and it's terrifying still to this day. If you watch that episode of The Twilight Zone, it must have been done 70 years ago. It's still absolutely terrifying. It's called It's a Good Life. Look it up.
And do you have you made shows, either Black Mirror shows or otherwise, which have at their kind of their central reference point a video game?
Oh yeah. So one of the most popular ones that we've done. Well, we did one called San Junipero, which is a sort of love story set in a virtual 1980s, and I was channeling two. One is it came out of a slightly different idea I was trying to do. That was about somebody trying to find if there was an afterlife by connecting to people's brains as they died. So I was trying to do a horror story, and then that sort of morphed somehow into this thing about a kind of therapeutic virtual youth space for old people. And I thought about the 1980s, and I was thinking about Grand Theft Auto Vice City, which is an open world game set in the 80s. And so quite often I'm channeling something like that. Again, we've got, in the season coming up, we've got something that's very explicitly about video games. We also did one called Striking Vipers, which was about two guys who go into a sort of Street Fighter Tekken style game and start having sex with each other. And that came about because in the 90s I used to play a lot of Tekken, and I was playing it with my friends, and we'd be sitting there going, you bust, come on, and then I realised the neighbours think we're just at it hammer and tongs in here. And that struck me as a funny thought, and that became a jumping off point. So quite often.
I think it's right in saying that you wrote a dissertation on Sonic the Hedgehog.
Yeah, it's stupid. That's why I never got my degree. I did a degree in media studies, and I wrote a dissertation about video games. It was terrible.
It would have worked now, though. You were
Now,
ahead of your time.
I was evidently a visionary who was ahead of his time. I'd love to say that, but actually it was terrible. It was mainly about Sonic the Hedgehog and Road Rash on the Mega Drive.
If you were on Desert Island Discs,
Which I was.
But it was sorry.
If I was.
But if you were, and it was called Desert Island Cartridges.
Okay.
And you could save one video game from the waves.
Doom. If there was one, it would be Doom. Maybe Tetris, because that's a sort of maybe Balatro, actually. But Doom was sort of the one that I thought that was, and it wasn't it wasn't ever physically available in shops. Yeah. It was shareware, so it was a good. So actually, it wouldn't actually fit your format, would it? It would be one. How would you store that? You wouldn't. It's in the cloud.
It just wouldn't work.
No.
Another question.
So I agree about Doom.
Good.
Nice.
A disclaimer, I work on AI policy, so this is
Right.
a really... Sorry?
Oh, no, I said right.
Yes, so this is a really weird place to be right now. And I meant to ask you about your sources, because your series has proved to be really unnervingly on point at various kind of across the seasons. But then you told us that you don't consult scientists, so I'm going to let that drop.
Sorry.
So my question, I suppose, is I really find it fascinating how people relate to technology, and I'm just wondering what are your thoughts in relation to what is the most funny or interesting way about how people relate to technology?
I think there's interesting. I think a lot of it is what we. There's a strange thing that, I mean, talking about social media, I think basically the thing about social media to me, I mean, I was being a little flippant when I said it's just full of bastards and whatever earlier on. It's kind of like being in a pub at closing time constantly. It's like people are on something. And so really I think we just need to learn to sort of factor that in. It's a bit like, oh, he's had a few drinks. Basically, it's kind of so. There's a sort of the anonymizing factor of it, or the sort of the lack of instant human feedback definitely makes people a little looser in ways that are not helpful for society and civilization as a whole. I think not even a funny thing. It's like a thing that went in my head really early in the 90s. I had I had a phone, or maybe it was early 2000s. Had a phone it was in the times when you could only store a set number of numbers in a phone. You could only store like 100 phone numbers or something like that. And half of them were for fucking takeaways and things like that. No Deliveroo back then. And a friend of mine had died, and this was the first time I knew someone I knew had died. I'd heard he was been a former flatmate, and I'd heard he'd died. And I was like, obviously, like really sad. And then like 6 months later, something like that, I'm trying to put a new phone number in my phone, and I don't have room, so I have to make space to delete numbers. And I was going through the numbers, and I saw this number for this person I knew who had died, and I knew that I should delete it, but I couldn't bring myself to delete it because it felt like that felt disrespectful, and that felt cold, and that made me feel sad. And there was something about the way that this device, this thing that was impersonal, was causing a really deep sort of emotional feeling in me that I found sort of fascinating and sad. And so I'm sometimes trying to channel that, I think, through the series. When people have asked me what the episodes are about, when people say it's a warning or something like that, I don't see the show as a warning about where we'll end up. I think actually, I don't think about what the show is overall, but someone has pointed out to me before that most of the episodes are about what is real and what is reality. And I think that, again, that's what I'm trying to channel a lot of the time. That's a lot of the stuff I worry about. That's why I worry so much about misinformation and things like that. I think when you see those, have you seen the videos that, like, AI generated videos, and there's that one of like people riding like rodeo riders, or there's one of like archaeologists pulling plastic chairs out of the ground, and the physics is all wrong. So the plastic chairs are sort of flopping about, or people's limbs are sort of mixing into their face, and that's kind of funny and horrifying on some nightmarish animal level, where you sort of feel like that's making the amygdala light up like a fucking Christmas tree. When I look at that, on some level, that's like, it's like reality melting into this sort of Dali-esque hellscape. I worry about that. What did I answer the question, or did I just actually spiral off into a sort of monologue?
Did he?
Did I?
Yes? Okay, yes.
Yeah. But that's because somebody was saying that's why most video game engines are 99% physics. That's because they're understanding the physics, and AI video doesn't understand the physics yet.
Have you thought at all, are you interested at all in like how we can potentially fix this? If reality and unreality get more blurred as we go on, is there anything we can do?
I just don't know, because it feels like people, like it used to be, it feels like constantly, it feels like you're dealing with fans of an alternate reality when you sort of wander into online spaces. That I don't know how you fix that schism. Or it reminds me of when I used to get annoyed if I'd have a conversation with somebody about homeopathy or something, and they'd be going on about homeopathy, and you'd be going, it's nonsense, and people didn't want to know, and eventually you'd sort of give it. It feels like that about everything. So I just don't know, because I think that. I suspect that I was watching something where there was somebody interviewing kind of Trump supporters about stuff, and when presented with facts about things, they'd eventually go, "I don't care," and I think that's actually the problem. Like it would come down to, actually, I don't care.
Yeah.
This is what I want to be. This is what I want to believe, and this is sort of who I am. It's an act of faith.
Yeah.
I don't know what you do about that. That's religion, isn't it?
It's nothing to do with reality.
So I really don't know how you could effectively kind of, what's the kite mark? What's the watermark for what's real footage we're going to be? I don't know.
But the danger is that the people that are going to tell you that it's real or unreal are the same people who own the platforms where all this stuff is coming out.
Well, and they're no fans of what's real.
Exactly.
In fact, cheerleaders sort of for the opposite. That I find chilling and terrifying. In fact, when we were talking about Joan is Awful earlier, and where originally one of the things that I was trying to work out a story about was about. I wanted to do a story about something that dressed itself up as a news network but claimed it was satire and was pumping out 24 hours a day photorealistic footage and with whole storylines that they had writers in, sort of like, here's Biden shitting his pants and falling over, and they'd do a sort of whole storyline and present and say this is satire and therefore get away with it and no one could land a glove on them. And I found it a sort of terrifying and funny idea, but now I think we're just almost there. So yeah, I couldn't work out how to make that an entertaining episode of television, and now I'm going to be living it. So it's depressing. Fucking hell, you've brought me down.
We've got time for a few more questions. So there's, I can't.
Hello.
Yes.
You spent a lot of your career writing about television in the kind of early to mid 2000s. And that was kind of really formative media for me. Obviously, because of the nature of it, I know you did a lot of positive kind of praising work in that time, but a lot of that was negatively focused. I wonder if there's anything you now look back at that era of telly quite nostalgic for?
Nostalgic for like the early 2000s TV, kind of like...
The culture of that telly that you just can't really experience now in the way that telly is structured.
I don't know, because like there's all that, like, do you mean just in terms of like the content of it, or do you mean, I just said content and I hate that word. Do you mean like the actual content of it, the way it was consumed and experienced?
I think a lot of that era of telly is now kind of looked back quite distastefully. I think like Jeremy Kyle show, things like that. But is there anything that you now miss that isn't prevalent in the television? Not so much individual programs, but kind of genres or themes that you can't really do anymore? Not
really, because I think now, the thing is that now there's so much stuff. Do you mean now there's so much TV? I think we're sort of massively, I shouldn't say this as somebody with a series coming out soon. Like, we're overserved. There's like too much stuff firing its way shitting out onto the big content pile. I said it again, like every day. So I don't know that, I don't think that there's, like, there was probably a sort of, there will have been, there was a excitement, I guess, of that era when things which were being made, but there's an excitement in every era. So no, I guess is my answer.
There's a lady in the middle.
Hi. I've got two questions. One's light and one's heavy. Feel free to ignore one. The light one is, what should we watch on TV right now that is not Black Mirror?
Okay.
And the heavy one is, what advice do you have for us all navigating whatever the future looks like?
What should we watch right now? My brain always goes immediately blank, annoyingly. What was the last thing I saw that I'd watched? Colin from Accounts, and I'd not watched it because I assumed I wouldn't like it, and then I watched the first series, and I really liked it. So that. What else? Oh God, there was a really good documentary. Now I can't remember. I watched Once Upon a Time in Northern Ireland. I know that was last year, but I hadn't realised how fucking ignorant I was about the situation in Northern Ireland. That was an amazing documentary. So there you go. And then the second one, how to navigate things. I don't know. I mean, I think I do. Like we just stick together. I don't know. Like it will sound. Anything I say will sound like I'm trying to come out with a fucking Coldplay lyric or something, won't it? I don't know.
I've just been told. I've just been told
that Chris Martin is about to walk out.
Welcome, Chris. No, I've just been told we've got to wrap up. So
okay.
we're left with some life advice and some TV recommendations. And yeah, thank you so much, Charlie. And season 7 is coming out. When
some
is it
point in
coming out?
2025.
So season 7, we're all going to watch it. Thank you so much, Charlie, and thank you everyone else for coming.
Cheers.